Welcome to the test review video for topics 3 and 4. So let's do number 1. On number 1 we have y equals -1. That's going to be a horizontal line at -1. So I'm going to go down to -1 on the y-axis and draw that line. Now this is all about systems. So I'm going to draw the other line and then I'm going to find the intersection point. In order to draw the other line, I have to get y by itself on one side of the equal sign, and I'm plugging in 0 to see where I start, which is the y-intercept. So if I plug in 0, I get 5. I'm going to go up to 5 and make my point, and then I'm going to use the slope, which is -3. It's really -3/1, so I'm going to go down 3 and to the right 1. And I'm going to look at my line and just make sure that that truly is a negative slope and not a positive slope. That way I know that I drew my line correctly. Okay? So I just marked the points for my line, and all of a sudden I noticed that I'm at 2, -1 is where I intersect with the y equals -1 line. So my answer is 2, -1. Okay, so for number 2, in my first equation, I'm going to go ahead and set y equal to by itself. So I solve for y, and I get -2x minus 4. I'm also going to solve for y on the other equation. So we're going to graph the first equation, okay? So I've got y equals -2x minus 4. I plug in 0 to see where my y-intercept is going to be. I get 0, -4, so I plot that, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my slope, which is -2. -2 is really -2/1, which is down 2/1. So I plot those points, and now I'm going to do the next equation. If I solve for y, I'm going to get -y equals 2x plus 6. I'm going to divide by -1, and that'll give me -2x minus 6. I'm going to do the same thing, go out and find the y-intercept. Which is plugging in 0, I get -6. And then I'm going to use that first point at 0, -6. I'm going to count down 2/1, which is my slope. Remember, a -2/1 is a negative slope. So I'm looking at these lines, and yes, they are a negative slope. I always double check myself when I'm drawing my slope, because if you down 2/1, which way, you're not sure which way to go. Okay? Now notice that I have 2 parallel lines. So that was a no solution. Okay, so now we're on to number 3. Again, I'm going to solve for y. So getting y by itself, I move the 4x over on the other side, which gives me minus 4x. And then I'm going to divide by -2. So -4 divided by -2 is +2, and 12 divided by -2 is a -6. Did you notice that I flipped the inequality sign? Now on the next one, I'm going to move the 2x over on the other side. So that's minus 2x plus 6, and I'm going to divide by -1. So I'm going to flip the inequality sign. Divide gives me a positive 2x. 6 divided by -1 is a minus 6. Okay, now I'm going to graph both of these lines. On the first line, I'm going to plug in 0 so I can figure out where to start my point or start my line. So I'm going to go with 0, -6 is the y-intercept. And the slope is 2 or 2 over 1. So I'm going to go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So now what I'm going to do is work on the next line. The next line is also a -6. So if I draw the next line, it's the same line. But the thing is that they are both shaded on both sides. One of them's greater than and one of them's less than. Okay, and also remember that if it's an equal to, then that's going to take precedence over a not equal to. Because of that, this problem is all real solutions. Okay. For our next problem, we have y less than or equal to x plus 2. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in 0, and that'll give me 2. And there's my y-intercept. So I've got 2, and the slope is 1, so I'm going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. I actually really like to shade everything at the end. So let's draw this line. And then we'll do the next line, which is plugging in 0, I get 5. So my y-intercept is 0, 5. And then it's a -1 for the slope, which is going to be down 1 over 1. Down 1 over 1. And draw that line. Now I'm going to shade. So notice that one of my lines, the second line, is a not equal to, so it needs to be a dashed line. And it is actually less than, and the first line is actually less than. So since both of these are less than, they both need to be shaded on the bottom. So I want to find where their intersection is, and so I'm going to shade both of them on the bottom. Okay, so for number 5, I'm going to go ahead and solve for y on the first equation. So I'm going to subtract x on the other side. And then I'm going to divide by -2. So y divided by -2 means I flip the inequality sign. And a negative divided by negative is going to give me 1/2 x. And -14 divided by -2 is going to give me +7. Let's go ahead and just graph the line, which if I plug in 0, I get 7. So my y-intercept starts at 0, 7. My slope is 1/2, so that's going to be up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. Okay. My next line is actually very simple because the y-intercept is 0. If I plug in 0, I just get 0. And the slope is -1. So with -1, it's going to be down 1 over 1. Just make sure that when you go over, you're going in the right direction. So I look at my blue line here and I say, okay, is that really a negative slope? If it's negative and my slope is negative, then I'm good to go. Okay, the first equation is supposed to be shaded greater than because I switched that before, and my second equation is greater than. So the intersection of both of those is going to be in this top portion right here. All right, number 6. Solving for y, I get y less than -2x plus 6. And then I have a horizontal line for y greater than -2. Okay, so let's graph the first equation. So we start at 6. If I plug in 0, I get the y-intercept is 0, 6. The slope is -2, so it's going to be down 2 over 1. Watch your line, make sure that that is a negative line or a negative slope. Okay, it is supposed to be not equal to, so the line needs to be dashed. And then I need to do my horizontal line for y greater than -2. So I'm going to go down to -2. And then that solid line is supposed to be dashed. And then we're going to shade. Okay, so for number 7, we're going to graph the constraints first. So let's do x greater than 0 and x less than or equal to 4. So we have x equals 0, x equals 4, and then I'm going to shade in between both of these because one's going to shade on the right and the other one's going to shade on the left. But I'm going to wait until I do the other two equations. This is the linear programming question. So I have to shade or graph the linear equations in the shade so I can find the vertices. Okay, so I've got y equals -1. Right there is the blue, is the horizontal blue line. And y less than or equal to x plus 2 is this line with a positive slope. Okay, shading means that I'm going to shade all through because two of them are less than and 2 of them are greater than. So it means I shade inside of that area there with a solid figure that has 4 sides. You may not always have 4 sides, but a lot of our problems have been that way. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the vertices. Okay, so I'm going to plot all my vertices. And then I'm going to look to see what those numbers are. I'm going to put them over here on the blank. So we've got 4, 6. 0, 2, 4, -1, and 0, -1. Okay, this is where the objective function comes into the problem. All right, I'm going to write out P equals, and I'm going to start using my very first vertex, which is 4, 6. Each one of these requires a separate calculation. So if I plug in 4 for the x and 6 for the y, I get 32. Okay, notice that I went ahead and put all of the other p functions in there so that you could see this. Okay, if I plug 0, 2 into the second one, and then 4, -1 into the third, and 0, -1 into the fourth one. Okay, so the max is at 32. So the max is 32, and it occurs at 4, 6. The minimum is -4, and it occurs at 0, -1, and that's your answer for this problem. You'll actually get credit for all of that graphing, though. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and please check out the other videos for this test review.